imagine that there are?
Over 20,000.
Over 20,000. Anybody think that that's high? We'll play Bob Barker and The Price is Right. Is that high or low?
I've heard both. I've heard higher, and I've heard people say it's a lot lower than that because it depends on how they categorize them. I've heard up to 30,000. I've heard up to like 6,500.
Yeah, your top number is actually a little closer to it. According to the World Christian Encyclopedia in 2001, of course, I did the research on this in 2004, 2005, and I thought, oh, this is pretty cutting edge stuff. We're getting a little long in the tooth. I know that there's another edition of the encyclopedia out, and so I suspect that this number is a little higher. But in 2001, it was 33,830 different Christian denominations, and the majority of these, the overwhelming majority of these, are some form of Protestantism. So once you take the Eastern Orthodox churches out of the mix, once you take these little tiny Miaphysite groups that split off from the church, prior even to the 11th century, tens of thousands of Protestant denominations, churches, sects. And so, whatever you want to say, Luther's basic idea and his firm conviction was that when it comes to resolving doctrinal disputes, that the big question sola scriptura, and he spoke of this, and Lutherans and Protestants ever since have spoken of this as the formal principle of the Reformation. What sola scriptura means is Scripture alone will resolve these debates. Now, you can see coming right up the road what the basic problem ends up being, right? The idea is that when two Christians, when two churches, when two denominations, when two dioceses, when two theologians disagree about a particular doctrine, the only standard, the sola scriptura, or the primary standard to which we must go and resolve this dispute, is Scripture. And that makes everything all right, right? That solves it. Everybody agrees, right? No, what happens is you have tens of thousands of different interpretations, and so you would think that this sort of works as a nice slogan, but in practice, where there are two Christians, like where there are two rabbis, there are three opinions. And this isn't just sort of mockery. This is actually how people go about making decisions. I have observed Protestant Christians for years. I have been a Protestant church pastor for years, and whenever I get into a question on theology, or want to resolve a difference, or explore the possibilities of what's permissible to believe or not believe, I do what everybody else does. I go to the Bible, and if I can't sort of figure it out with my own commentary, or with my Greek Bible and Greek dictionary, or my Hebrew Bible and my Hebrew dictionary, I'm off to a commentary. And, I consult somebody that knows a little more Hebrew, a little more Greek than I do, and read what they say. And, the problem is that different commentators read different passages differently, and so I have not one commentary on Romans. I have 8 commentaries on Romans, and I gain insight and learn a great deal from each one of them. But then it usually comes down to which one I like a little more. I think I can argue it. I think I can defend it. But I'm down, in many cases to, arguing over really debatable points. It's not a slam dunk. I'm not making decisions based on 75, 80% of the evidence. I'm making decisions on 51, 55, 57% either way of the evidence. And so the question is, how do we know? So let's make this a little more discussion oriented. When you encounter different Christians or even different Catholics, because there's a good bit of diversity in the Catholic Church, as well as outside the Catholic Church. How do you see people going and resolving, doctrinal issues?
Catechism, that's the same.
Okay, so.
You have a question, that's where you go.
All right, so we have a catechism. Yeah, catechism of the Catholic Church, or do you use the Baltimore catechism?
No, the catechism. The latest one.
The 92 catechism?
Yeah, the promulgated by John Paul II.
Yeah. No, I was.
The old Baltimore catechism, I have a copy of that, but it was very hard for me to understand, to read it.
Yeah, and Baltimore catechism is just a slight updating of the Catechism of the Council of Trent. So literally from the 1560s until 1992, that was the doctrinal manual for Catholics.
Yeah, that's what I learned.
For me, it was hard to go to get a definition to find something. I got more confused on the wording because I couldn't. Yeah. It was easy for me to follow. Yeah.
What's that?
I think you have the same problem convincing on the catechism as we do other ones, because the catechism again is made up by Catholics or Catholics.
Yeah.
So in that definition, somebody can still say, the nice thing about being Baptist or one of the Protestants is you've always got an answer for something, because it's in one spot.
Yeah.
If we look for answers to Catholicism, it's not only in the Bible, it's in lots of other letters and whatever writings so I wouldn't trade it for the world, but sometimes it is not a comfortable feeling not to be able to answer a question because it's been part of your beliefs and you still believe it,
Right.
but you're not quite sure how you should respond.
Yeah.
That's a very uncomfortable position, and it's also a position of weakness when you're talking to someone that is more of a traditionalist and follows the Bible as the soul.
No, and that's you can really feel put on the spot because I was never discouraged from reading the Bible, and I had an English Bible, as a Catholic kid growing up. But before I really, got into some serious Bible studies, and then went into Bible college and into seminary, I didn't feel like a great deal of, I wasn't armed to the teeth to fight Bible conversations, fight Bible wars back and forth. And so, there's a comfort in Catholicism that you have a relationship to an authority that says, I don't have to know everything in order to have a sense of confidence. It's the old line, I don't have to be smart if I can go find smart.
Yeah, that's what I look at, because everything's there in the catechism, like you said. I find comfort in that we have a Magisterium in our church handed down apostolic straight from the apostles.
Yeah.
Down through, so there's, like you said, the Baptist, I guess they may have, you know, when you ask them, if they go to the Bible, well, what makes you confident that your interpretation of what you're reading is the truth?
Yep.
You know, well, God will tell her something else in that same verse, something that we have a Magisterium. Now, you may not believe that yourself, but I have trust and faith in that that Magisterium and obedience to that those things are defined for us. We have a church Magisterium, the church that defines these things for us.
Yeah.
And it's been laid down from history. It doesn't change from person to person, or if you go to one Bible church. I mean, this in California, we have these, you know, they have a lot of Bible churches there, and you have Pastor Bill and Pastor Bob, and they went to seminary together, were best buddies, and started a church, and then a few years into it, they got disputes over stuff, and one of them went and started their own church, and they're both telling each other's congregation that Pastor Bob he's outside the Lord now, he's not following no Pastor Bob. These guys are best buddies in seminary, now they're calling each, not quite calling each other heretics, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then there's, you know, that pain split. Because, like, how much did it split even before Luther died? You know?
Yeah.
Lutheran faith had split into.
Luther, just a few years into the Reformation, got into a scrape with Andreas Karlstadt, and with a guy by the name of Thomas Müntzer, and then with a guy by the name of Ulrich Zwingli, and you know, then you get to the Marburg colloquy, and Zwingli and Luther are fighting over how Jesus is present in the Eucharist. Then three of Zwingli's students get into a scrape with Zwingli and become Anabaptists, you know, what today we think of as Mennonites and Amish guys. And so before Luther died, you know, I mean, you have the disruption and dispute between different Protestant groups already multiplied. So that, you know, by the time, you know, Luther dies at the same time the Council of Trent convenes, and you've already got Calvinists and Zwinglians and Anabaptists and Lutherans, and there are little micro differences, you know, between them. There are also Anglicans over in England.
What's the time frame? How many years it takes for all that to happen?
Well, you know, the Council of Trent starts in 1530 something. And, you know, so I mean, you're talking about, you know, a decade or two. That this blows up. And I mean, it's 1563 is when the Council of Trent closes. And it was a long council. So I mean, it was, you know, just a few decades, you know, that this multiplication starts to happen. So how do you think a Baptist goes and resolves a Bible dispute? I mean, do you think that, you know, you've got Sister Betty Lou or Brother Bobby Joe over there, and they've got just, you know, they're armed to the teeth as Bible scholars? What happens, do you think, when a Protestant Christian, you know,
they go to their pastor first?
That's exactly what they do. And you know how I know this?
Because you were the pastor.
Because every week at the end of Mass, for 20-some years, you know, people come up and ask me questions. And, you know, what do you think about this? You know, I had this conversation with this Baptist friend of mine, and what do you think about this? And how long do you have this conversation? Because if you've got some time, we can sit down and have a cup of coffee, and I'll give you the street. But you know, that's, you know, and so, you know, what you're describing about, you know, consulting the catechism, or consulting Father Bruce, or consulting me, or consulting, you know, some church authority, not essentially different than what a Baptist Christian will do. Now, the Baptist person will propose that it's a Bible doctrine, you know, a Bible alone kind of thing. But what they're accepting is a reading of the Bible that is being proposed to them by an authority, right? You had your hand.
I did. This is, and I'm coming